Back up. Here we are. Alright, back up and getting ready for the wrap-up now. I just wanted to, like I said, split the stream to make it easier to archive this to YouTube. So at this point, I'm going to be heading back to the gold statue. Since really that is the only thing left in the game, the only positive clue I have as to where to go next. And honestly, at this point, also you could spend your time, you know, searching back through the previous areas, using the space jump, using the grapple beam, using the space jump, using the plasma gun, the stuff you've got, the spring ball, getting the last of the items in the game, really scouring the world, because at this point now, you're pretty sure that this is the end. And it's funny at this point with the walk back being the thing, you know, the only step left in the process. I'm not really sure what needs to be said at this point. I mean, I try to think back to my first experience with this game, which was obviously a long time ago. To be totally honest, you know what, this seems to be my pattern with a lot of games, that I didn't play the first one in the series, and then I kind of came in later. So, like, I didn't play the first Metroid at all until well after I had played Super Metroid. And it was after I played Super Metroid, then I played Metroid 2: The Return of Samus on the Game Boy. And I don't know why I always insist on saying the full name. It's good. Metroid 2: The Return of Samus. This is just the weird... just sort of the weird OCD of me. But... So, honestly, it's kind of an interesting experience I had, because as impressive as Metroid was for its time, as impressive as Metroid 1 was for its time, because it did a lot of unique things. Going back to it from Metroid 2 sort of exposed the flaws more than anything, because Metroid 1 was pretty well designed, but it left you high and dry and lost a lot more than Super Metroid does. Whereas Super Metroid kind of managed to make you feel like you were lost, feel like you were alone, without actually leaving you alone. So, like, kind of like all the little tricks I've pointed out through the whole game that lead you to this and lead you to that, and remind you of this and remind you of that. It was all very, very carefully well designed, and there was a great interview that Yoshio Sakamoto did, who was one of the co-creators of the original Metroid, and then he left the team when they did Metroid 2: The Return of Samus, and he was tapped to direct or produce this one. And in the interview, he talked about how much they wanted to build on the direction the game had gone. So that, like, I mean, the first Metroid game kind of laid down the idea of an open environment where you could explore in all 4 different directions. It was one of the first games to let you scroll freely in all different directions, to go back, to go forward. You know, it didn't have ratcheting scrolling like Super Mario Brothers or Kid Icarus, where once you advanced beyond a point, you couldn't go back off the screen again. It was one of the first, was one of the first games to include a password system, so that you could, remember your progress and come back to it. And just the idea of being an open world game where the different abilities you discover let you open and unlock new areas was kind of it was kind of a new innovative thing. But if you were like me and you actually played Super Metroid first, just because that just happened to be the way you did it, I just never happened to play Metroid. You this spot is such a pain in the ass. I'm not really talking about that spot. So the thing is, that's yeah, you know what? We'll just go back this way. The problem with that shaft is that the ledges that you can stand on are destroyed by the space jump or by the screw attack, and the enemies are destroyed by the screw attack too. So it's actually harder to do it with the screw attack and the space jump than without, especially because you temporarily destroy those blocks with your laser, and it comes back pretty quickly, so you have to make your way back up the shaft pretty quick. Now, in the interest of saving a little bit of time, I'm not grabbing all the energy tanks and missile packs that I could, even though there are a bunch scattered around that I missed. And I'm not using my speed boost there because I don't want to fall back down into the Chora pit. But, what was I saying? So, going back and trying to play the original Metroid, it kind of felt like sort of a cheap, sort of a primitive knockoff, because I played Super Metroid first. But interestingly enough, as a result, I had a much better experience with Metroid 2, which reaction to that was a lot more mixed. It played very differently from the first Metroid. I mean, it still had the same basic exploration element to it, but it was a lot more linear, and it was gated, so that you had to kill all the bosses in a certain area before you were even allowed to proceed. So you kind of lost some of the free-roaming exploration. And I know the statue door is right there, but I'm actually going to go back to the ship and recharge everything and save my game before I go into the statue door. Just in case there's something in there. Not that I know what's coming. But, so, like in Metroid 2, the basic premise was you went to SR-388 to exterminate the Metroids, and it's basically this series of caverns and catacombs, kind of very much like this game. But the Metroids themselves had started to evolve, so you encountered different boss fights in the form of different evolutions of the Metroids. They were alphas, betas, gammas, omegas, and various areas of the game were cut off from you with lava pits. Basically, lava that you couldn't survive in. And what would happen is after you killed a certain number of Metroids in an area, that the lava would drop and it would allow you to access the next area of the game. And so in that case, it was much more staged. It was much more a progression of levels. At the same time, one of the neat things it did was it actually gave you a count of how many Metroids were in the game. And it just said, okay, you know what, at the start, there's like 50 Metroids, I think, something like that. Something like 50 Metroids in this planet. Go exterminate them all. And that was your mission. And then ultimately, there were cool evolutions, because the evolutions would get more powerful as the game progressed, until ultimately you were fighting the Queen. I actually recently tried to play Zero Mission, which is the Game Boy Advance remake of... Or Game Boy Advance or DS? One of them. Anyway, it's the remake of the original game, but they added a whole bunch of new content. And wasn't overly impressed with it, to be honest. But enough about that, because here I am at the gold statue, having wiped out Kraid, Phantoon, Dragon, and Ridley, to find out what happened to the baby Metroid. The baby Metroid which saved Samus's life, and as a result Samus could not bring herself to exterminate. Which kind of makes me wonder about, you know, her collecting a paycheck. Because it's nice that she put it in a jar and brought it back for the scientists and all, and said, hey, we should study this. But at the same time, she had a job to do, and she kind of blew it. And now we're in a completely different area, and you will notice that there is no music. It is actually just this strange, bubbling, ambient noise. Oh, there's a little bit of a strange noise. We also notice that we have a map of the area, and we can see that it's sort of a linear zigzag with 2 save points, which in itself should be fairly ominous. If you played the first Metroid game, this area very much resembles the final area in that game. And you might even notice that it bears a little bit of a resemblance to the area that we first passed through that I mentioned was a callback to the first game, way back at the beginning of this. So this is Turian, which was once... Whoops. And that's a Metroid. I didn't show that off very well. So, that is a true Metroid. Given a chance, they will latch onto you and drain your health until you are dead. If you hit them with bombs... Oh, sorry. If you hit them with a power bomb, it will cause them to lose their grip or die if you've hurt them enough. But the trick to beating Metroids is that they're vulnerable to the ice beam. And then you can blast them with missiles. Showing off that first one, let me get caught by the other ones. Okay. So you blast the Metroids with the ice beam, and then you hit them with 5 missiles to take them out. Story-wise, the Metroids were originally discovered by science teams on planet SR-388, and when a science vessel was attacked by space pirates, the space pirates got the biological sample of the Metroid. They discovered that it had the life-draining properties, and they also discovered that with exposure to beta radiation, they would breed in huge numbers very quickly, which set the stage for the first game, where Mother Brain, the leader of the space pirates, was breeding them as part of a takeover bid to take over the galaxy. Like you do. And just like in the first game, or just like in this game, in the first Metroid game, you actually did not encounter Metroids until the very last area of the game. So, even though the game was called Metroid, you didn't... And Metroids had been built up, in that case, through the instruction manual, which was the only way to really build something up. You didn't encounter them until the very end of the game. The little turrets, there that shoot the donut lasers are called Rinkas. Or actually, I think the lasers themselves are called Rinkas. They're kind of more of a nuisance than anything, but if you actually bother to freeze their shots, they won't generate a new shot. Now you will notice that music has kicked in. Dramatic boss music. It is actually the same as the pre-boss music. And I am facing these invincible enemies. I don't want to waste too much ammo, but nothing I've got actually does anything to them. Fortunately, I'm not locked in here, So I simply leave. And then I find the Chozo statue, which strangely enough doesn't seem to be moving. And it crumbles to dust when disturbed. I'm not going to say much about what's going on right now, and in fact, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut for a bit. So that if you've never played this game before, you can kind of see it the way the game presented it. In case you can't tell, there was nothing I could do there. The reason I shut up and just let that happen is because it is really one of the most effective bits of wordless storytelling pretty much in any video game ever. It's a really powerful moment, and I didn't want to talk over it. And you kind of have to infer what was going on. Obviously, that was the Metroid larva. We see that when Metroids drain things of all their lives, they become that sort of brittle sandstone and crumble. We also saw that the baby Metroid recognized Samus, and after almost draining her dry, at the last moment, let her go. And now, having no further idea what to do, we proceed. Because what else are you gonna do? Uh-oh. An eye door. And we know what eye doors mean. And a save point. The last in the game. Actually, the point of no return. At this point, if you haven't found everything you need, you're out of luck. People who played the original Metroid will immediately recognize this room. People who haven't won't. And I'm not going to say anything. Because again, I'm trying to preserve the experience and no spoilers. But we find that we can shoot through those little objects. It takes a lot of missiles, but we can kind of plow through them. And there we find what we recognize from the opening sequence, the Mother Brain. Revived, and once again leading the Space Pirates. And just like in the first game, I mean, this boss fight is almost word for word identical to the original Metroid. Shatter her jaw, kill her. Only missiles will do it. Even a fully charged beam doesn't. Once again, thus fall the space pirates and Mother Brain. Or do they? This is not how the original Metroid ended. But it is pretty damn awesome. So this is, I guess, Mecha Mother Brain. She moves back and forth. She's really cool. Her animation is really cool. And she's got that beam attack. You have to hit her in the brain. She will also periodically drop those bombs. I cheated a little bit knowing this was coming. I preserved my super missiles. Because once again, they do more damage. And this is another great visceral fight where you just sort of unload everything you've got and hope. When you're out of missiles, it's going to have to be the charge beam, which now damages her. And as you continue to damage her, she develops new attacks. I like the sound and the sense of impact that red beam has. It really feels powerful. Shit, that's a powerful attack. Samus is on her knees, not responding to the controls. You're kind of stuck here. Shit. I got nothing to say. Just watch and enjoy. I'm pausing for just a second to show that Samus's beam has changed. In transferring Mother Brain's energy to Samus to save her, the baby Metroid has also transferred that rainbow-colored hyper beam. And you can see that it is a highly satisfying beam to use. The recoil, the scream when she gets hit. It is a very powerful, very good sense of power, because reeling from the death of the baby Metroid, which had just been destroyed to save Samus's life, it's kind of a great... They put a lot of work into making that hyper beam feel like Samus was wailing on Mother Brain. And, of course, I don't have a lot of time to dally here because, there's been an explosion set, which is exactly the way the first Metroid ended as well. This is a little bit of a maze, and it's actually possible to lose it. I mean, not like the opening sequence where it was so easy to get through that really you weren't very likely to lose it at all. This one is actually a legitimate challenge. You can blow it. It's not easy to blow it, I mean, but if you're really clumsy and you haven't gotten the platforming down and you take a couple of wrong turns, you're kind of screwed. Anyway, again, what I find most impressive about that confrontation with Mother Brain is how much story is told without a single word of text. And in addition to everything that Metroid does right in terms of exploration-based gameplay, and empowering the player, it also does a great job of doing everything it does with no text at all. It doesn't make you read any lines of dialogue. It doesn't explain anything. You kind of just have to figure out what happened in that scene. Shit, don't fall. Now, I'm rushing a little bit because I am gonna do something. I'm gonna do something that is kind of the final Easter egg in the game. There were actually a couple of friendly life forms on this planet that helped me out, specifically the Detroras and the Edacoons. And by not going directly to my ship, I actually have the opportunity to save them. Summer, because I totally forgot to do it. So you blast open this wall, and that gives the Edacoons and the Detroras who have gathered here a chance to run for it. It's tough to notice, but in the ending sequence, you can just make out a little dot of their spaceship leaving the planet. I'm warning you now because I really don't have a good way to point it out, but it'll be there. So it turns out that the Detrora and the Edacoons can pilot a spaceship or escape pod and save themselves. Yeah, not even going to touch that one. Summer Glow asked why I didn't Shine Spark through the first part of that maze, and the reason is because I kind of forgot to. I was so concerned about not taking the wrong hallway. But what are you gonna do? It's like I said, it's been a long time since I played this. Yeah, good luck recovering the Space Pirate organization from this one. I like that Samus left nothing to chance on this one. This is finally, she just blew up the world. Blew up a planet. Yeah, I knew I wasn't going to make the 3-hour time limit. So, I keep referring to this 3-hour time limit, and one of the reasons for it, or one of the... Oh, I thought Sakamoto was the producer. I guess he was the director. Yeah, there he is, Yoshio Sakamoto. Okay. So, the whole deal with the 3-hour time limit is the faster that you beat this game, the better the ending that you get. But the difference between one ending and another is really kind of tiny, and you see Sam. Well, I'll let the game play out. No, I'll talk because it's the credits. What are we gonna do? So at the end of the credits, you'll see Samus standing there saying, "Hey, good job. You know, mission accomplished," or whatever. And depending on how quickly you finish the game, you'll get a different image of Samus. You'll either get her in her power armor, get her in her armor with her visor open, or with her helmet off, or you will get her in her, well, it's basically a bikini or a one-piece. And part of the reason for that, because I mean, it seems a little bit silly, and I'm actually stumbling over it because it hasn't occurred to me how silly it is until I come to try and explain it to other people. But it actually goes back to the first Metroid and the decision that was made to make Samus female. And it was actually something that grew out of just the creators of the game. I think the four of them were sitting around, and one of them said, "Hey, wouldn't it be neat if it turned out that Samus was a female? If Samus was a woman?" And they kind of agreed to do that. And so the idea was, if you finished the first game fast enough, then you would get a reveal of Samus without her armored suit on, so that you would know she was a woman. And if you didn't finish it fast enough, you'd just see her in the powered armor and have no idea. Now, the thing is, they actually worked really hard to kind of keep that a secret, because and this is the scene with Samus and in various states of dress. But the English instruction manual refers to Samus as a he throughout the entire manual, for the first Metroid, not this one. But if you go back and look at the original Japanese, it also strongly implies that Samus is a man, meaning that they were trying to cover up the surprise reveal. And this game, the ending of this game, and the image that you get of Samus is a throwback, is kind of a tribute to that first game. The other thing, and the thought that I'm going to close on here, honestly, is the screen that you see here in front of you now, your item collection rate. This was the most insidious thing about this game, was that when you got to the end, you saw the end, you got through everything, and you felt like, hey, I did really good, and look at all the stuff I found. And then you get an item collection rate, and it's like, hey, you only found 65% of the stuff in the game. And you're like, wait a minute, what? How? But I, scoured everything. And so you went back and you played it again and again and again. It sort of encouraged you to go back and do that scavenger hunt thing. It's sort of, this little screen, as insignificant as it is actually daring you to play the game again and do it better. All right, it's telling you exactly how much you didn't find. Especially because you feel awesome about yourself at this point for beating the game. So it's just one final last little psychological trick that the designers of the game played on you. Anyway, end result, that's Super Metroid. It's an amazingly well-designed game to emphasize exploration, and to emphasize empowerment, and I think it's got a lot of great lessons for D&D DMs, or, game masters of any RPG. I gotta stop thinking just in terms of D&D. So next week, I'm going to come back and I'm going to start on Metroid Fusion, which teaches a completely different set of lessons in my mind. And Metroid Fusion is a little bit more of a contentious game. It's a lot more divisive. This one is pretty much universally loved, critically acclaimed. Everyone thinks it's basically the best game to ever happen to anything ever. And Metroid Fusion had much more of a mixed reception, and it does some things very differently. And hopefully I can share that stuff with everyone. So everybody who sat through this whole stream, or who's watching it on YouTube, I want to say thanks. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you'll check out my blog on game mastering, because I've been talking about this game there too, and expanding on some of the lessons there, and I've got a lot of other great stuff too. Otherwise, I'll see whoever wants to show up on Friday for Dark Souls, and next Tuesday for Metroid Fusion.